All right, so special product rules. It only works with binomials, and it only works with 3 types of problems. And this is my, internal struggle, right, of viewing the life of Mrs. Long. I teach you these special rules, and somehow you kind of lose your mind, right? It's like when we do equations, and the time you learn that an equation can have no solution, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that's a no solution. This one's a no solution too. This one's a no solution. No, right? Special product rules don't happen 50% of the time. But if you can recognize these 3 special problems, it's going to cut your work down by 75%. But only for those 3 special types of problems. Everything else is still a full problem. You can't be like, oh, this is close enough. No, it's got to be exactly the same way.
Exactly. No,
so before we start, let's go with this and say that FOIL will always work. So if we get done with this and you're like, what in the world did that lady just teach me? Foiling will always work. You can get the correct answer by foiling. And that's okay. These special tricks, though, can help make things a little bit easier. So here's type 1. Type 1, and they must be in this form. A, so a term, right? It could be 3x, it could be 9y, it could be negative 7r squared. Something plus something different and that binomial squared. So type 1 must be a plus, and it must be squared.
can it be negative?
Type 1 problems. These are special problems. You don't have to FOIL them. You don't have to do all the extra work. Could you? Yes. Could you draw a 2x2 grid for them? Yes. Or you can use this special trick. Now let's discover this special trick. All right, so this is not in your notes. This is just on my piece of paper. Let's do 3x plus 4 squared, right? Does this problem match this problem up here? Yes, it's something plus something, and that binomial is being squared. So if we were going to do this the long way, the foiling way, I would expand it, and I would do first times first, which is what? 9x squared, 9x to the second power. Then I would do outside, 3x times 4. And then I would do inside, 4 times 3x. And then I would do last, 4 times 4, which is 16, right? And then I would do what? Combine to get 24x plus 16. Right? And that's my answer. Here's the trick, Gabby.
So with the x, did you have the 1 so it would be 24x squared?
No, because you're adding them together, you don't combine the variable. The variable stays the same. You only combine your exponents of 1 if you're multiplying. Okay, so the rule is a squared meaning the first term squared. And the first term squared in this problem was 3x, so 3x times 3x, 3x squared is 9x squared, right? Plus, always the number 2 times a times b. So let's look at this example. The number 2 times 3x is what? 6x times b, which is 4. 6x times 4 is 24x. Plus b squared, the last term, squared, which is 4. So 4 squared is 16. So it works. It works every time if it matches this type of problem. So let's try another one. (2x plus 7 squared). The binomial 2x plus 7 squared. So we do the first term squared. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. Plus 2 times 2x is 4x times 7 is 28x. And last, 7 times 7 is
Speak louder than that.
49. Shh, you're not answering either. Let's try another one. 3x plus 4y squared. Again, this meets the criteria. It's a plus problem, and it's a binomial being squared. So 3x times 3x is 9x squared. What's 2 times 3x? 6x times 4y. 6 times 4 is 24xy. And 4y times 4y is 16y squared. So if we write it out in words, sometimes that helps us. If it is a binomial that's being added and that binomial that's being added is being squared, it looks like this. It's the first term squared. It's 2 times the first term times the second term. And 3, it's the second term squared. And again, if this doesn't make sense to you, what could you do? Foil. So you say, all right, so this is a plus. Mrs. Long, what happens if it's a minus? All right, let's do that one. A minus b squared. A minus b squared. So let's change just one thing in this problem. Instead of 3x plus 4, let's do 3x minus 4 squared. 3x minus 4 times 3x minus 4.
Get off.
3x times 3x is 9x squared. 3x times negative 4 is negative 12x. Negative 4 times 3x is, and negative 4 times negative 4 is, what's this answer? 9x squared.
You need to charge.
I saw it. Minus 24x. So what's the difference? If it's a minus problem, what changes? Where does it change? Term 1, term 2, or term 3? Term 2 changes from positive to negative. That's the only difference. I'm going to leave this blank right here and put 2ab plus b squared.
Why?
And I'll show you why in a second. So let's try this problem. 4 minus 3x squared. What's a? 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. First term squared. Now I do 2 times a times b. So 2 times 4 is times negative 3 is negative 24x. Right? 2 times 4 is 8 times negative 3 is negative 24x. And then last, negative 3x times negative 3x is now here's why I didn't put that sign in here. Everybody watch. Are you ready? If you would have put a minus here, that means that you would have done negative 2 times a, which is 4, right? So negative 2 times 4 is negative 8, times b, which is negative 3x. So negative 8 times negative 3 is
Double negative.
double negative, which would change this to a positive. So the formula, I'm going to put a plus there. But I'm going to circle it and say, you know, the answer will be minus. Does that make sense?
I don't understand how that works.
Because a positive times a negative. That's the way that the pattern works. You're going to only have one negative. So in your answer, you're going to have a negative. instead of a double positive. So it's the same formula, except when it's a minus problem, your answer has a minus inside of it. Try another one. 2x minus 3 squared. 2x minus 3 squared. So the first term squared. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. Then I'm going to do 2 times 2x is 4x times negative 3 is negative 12x. And I know I've done it right because I ended with a minus right here. And then last but not least, negative 3 times negative 3 is this guy right here in the light blue. I forgot something about it. What's a better way of writing it? What's it called? Standard form. 9x squared minus 24x plus 16, right?
Why would that be any better? That's my question.
Because standard form's better. It's mathematically prettier.
If I don't have it in standard form, will it be incorrect?
We've talked about this. Type 2, right? Then let's go to type 3. Arguably the easiest of them. Binomial times a binomial.
Foil.
Type 3, binomial times a binomial. This is not a squared problem. This is a plus b times a minus b. What's the difference here? Come on. One of them is a negative and one of them is a positive. One's a plus and one's a minus. So if we FOIL, 3x times 3x is outside. 3x times negative 4 is inside. 4 times 3x is, and last, 4 times negative 4 is, then I combine. What happens to those? They cancel out. They're opposites. That's always going to happen. So my answer is 9x squared minus 16. So if one's positive and if one's negative, the middle term disappears.
What if it's the first one? What if the first one is a negative? Is a negative.
So Jacob asks, what if the first one's negative and the second one's positive? Do you think that matters? What property tells us it does not matter? What property says multiplying doesn't matter? Order of multiplying doesn't matter. Commutative property of multiplication. The order doesn't matter. So, a squared, a times a is a squared. And then you do b times b, and you always put I guess let's make that a positive. Will turn to a minus. And why will this always be a negative? Why will b squared always be a negative? Why, looking at this formula right here, will you always have a negative b squared value? Damaris?
Because it's fractal.
Camden, why? Because you're always going to have a positive times a negative, because that's the way the formula is set up. And a positive times a negative will always result in a negative. So let's try it. Four x minus 9 times 4x plus 9. This is what Jacob asked. Does this change our answer? No. Just because the minus binomial is first doesn't change our answer. So what's 4x times 4x?
That's not what I was asking.
16x squared. And what's negative 9 times 9? You're done.
Nope.
7x plus 8y and 7x minus 8y. Seven x times 7x is 49x squared. And 8y times negative 8y is negative 64y squared. And you're done. Now again, this only works for these three types of problems. On your homework, they will be all three types. Like there's no problem that it doesn't work for. But don't forget, if this doesn't make sense, I mean, you have to have it perfectly memorized. If you memorize it but you flip-flop two of them, it does no help for you, right? Don't forget, FOIL still works.
FOIL always works.
FOIL doesn't always work.